Hi guys, today we are going to go through the steps of how to create a yarn painting. Now, yarn paintings that we're doing in class kind of look like this here. So you can see the different yarn colors and the textures that we have here. And then there is another example. Okay, so they have a lot of texture, and we're studying this in conjunction with Van Gogh. Van Gogh is known for making very textured paintings. There's a lot of movement and rhythm in his paintings, and he used a lot of kind of like thick brush strokes with his paintings. And so what we're going to be doing is we are going to create a yarn painting in his style. And so we're going to have, lots of colors. We are going to have maybe some swirly type of things, if that works out with our picture. Okay, and what we're going to start off with is a piece of cardboard. Okay, so these are pre-cut for you. These are the ones that I passed out in class. Okay, and this one has tape on this side and this one does not have tape on it. Okay, so to start off with, I'm just going to say the side that has tape on it is my back, and I'm going to write my name on here. Now, if you have a side that has both of them have tape or something along those lines, you can take this tape off, but it's not necessary if you plan to use this one for the back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write my name on here, and I'm using Sharpie so that it pops really, really well. Okay, if I use pencil, it might be too light to see. Okay, so it's a little bit harder to see the pencil, very easy to see the Sharpie. So we're gonna write this in black Sharpie here, and I'm gonna flip over my cardboard. Now, with this, I'm going to look up pictures of the sky, okay? Van Gogh is very well known for the way he interprets how the sky looks in a lot of his paintings, and so we're gonna be focusing on the sky for this. Now, we have a couple of options. We can either look at sunrise or sunset, or you can look at a space picture, right? So something like a galaxy type of picture, a nebula, the Milky Way, things like that, okay? We don't want to do just a normal sky picture where it's like a cute little sun and some clouds and then everything else is blue for a couple of reasons. One of those is generally, that's kind of, if you think of a sky, that's kind of the expected take on that. It's not really outside of the box so much. And then also, it's harder to, I think, include all of the different colors. And sometimes when people create things like that, it kind of looks a little bit more elementary than maybe what we're going for, right? Because we talked about we're aiming to look like advanced artists. Okay, so I'm going to be looking for a picture on Google. And what I want to do is I want to make sure, especially if you're looking at the outer space or galaxy type of pictures, make sure you put the word photograph or photography in there with your search. So if you look up galaxy photography, you're more likely to find a picture that was actually taken with a camera, maybe through a telescope, and you will be able to look at pictures that were not created by somebody else, okay? Because galaxy print has been super popular lately, and so people have been able to make that digitally, but we're looking for a real photograph, okay? Okay, so we have kind of this computerception going on, but if I look at galaxy photography here, okay, I can look at all of these, and some of these are beautiful, right? But I want to kind of look at, if there's somewhere I'm like, I don't know if that is a real photograph or if that is something that was made by somebody else. So one of the things is I would look at, like, this one's really, really nice, but it comes from Amazon.com. So there's a chance that maybe this is just an art piece as opposed to being a photograph of it. Okay, if I look at something like Scientific American, that sounds like maybe it could be more likely to be a photograph. If I saw something from NASA.com or space.com, this one right here is from time.com, and I know Time is a pretty good reference. Okay, so that might be something that we can look at there. Okay, so you would go through and find the one that you are interested in creating. I kind of like this one right here. This is from the New York Post. So I'm going to open this in a new tab to look at this. Okay, so I have this picture here, and I'm going to start sketching this out using pencil. Okay, and I'm going to sketch out the areas that I see here on my cardboard. Okay, so we're going to kind of bring this back down here to the cardboard. Okay, so we're back down here. And I am going to just sketch out the different shapes that I see. Now, the thing about galaxies, if you're choosing to do a galaxy, or a galaxy type of picture, is that they have a bunch of weird shapes, right? Like a lot of times it's kind of just different colors of space dust. So you're just going to draw the shapes that you see. So if you see kind of a blobby thing over here, then you'll draw the blobby thing over here. If you have like a kind of oval type of thing going over here, you could draw that in. If you're drawing a sunset or a sunrise, kind of the same idea, right? So say that you have some ground down here and you have your little sun either going up or down, and then you have maybe some clouds here, and you have some sections where like, hey, this top area here is much darker, and this area here is lighter, and maybe, you know, this side has a pinkish tone and this side looks more purple. You would kind of sketch those in, because when you're sketching as a preliminary part of your artwork, like if you're going to put paint or a yarn or whatever else on top of it, sketching is really helpful for getting in. It's kind of like a roadmap for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to look here and I'm going to start sketching out what I see. Now, my picture goes this direction, so I'm going to put my cardboard this direction. If my picture was turned this way and it made more sense for my cardboard to go this way, then I would turn it, okay? Just choose whatever goes best with your picture. So for me, I'm looking here and I have kind of this shape here, and it kind of comes over this way like this, and it comes all the way up to the edge here. And I have this center kind of at an angle right here, and it kind of comes out this way. Right, and this one kind of goes along this way. Reminds me of those little hurricane things that they show on the news when they're showing the weather, right? And then it kind of spirals from here, literally. Okay, so it kind of comes out this way. And I'm just looking at where the spirals are going and how they look on my picture here. Let's see, so this one kind of tucks up over here and grabs this outer layer this way. Okay, and I have kind of a secondary color over here. Okay, and then I have a couple of pieces that go out this way. So I'm just doing my sketching here. Okay, and then there's a section here that is a little bit darker like this. Okay, so I've sketched this out, and then I can go ahead and put in some of those important looking stars. So I have one there, I've got one here. There's one right about here. Here, I've got one over here, and there's one right here. Okay, and then I think that's good for now. Okay, so I have my drawing done. Okay, very first steps here. I've got my drawing sketched out. I've done this in pencil. That way, if I goof, I can change things around a little bit. Okay, and again, if you're doing a sunset or a sunrise, you'll kind of sketch those out. If your sunset or sunrise has some land in it or a tree, ooh, sorry about that. Okay, so if your sunset has some land in it or a tree or maybe like some kind of like, you know, mountain looking thing, you can have that in there. That's totally fine. We don't want to choose something that has like a person in it. Okay, because our main focus is that we want it to be the sky. And so if there's a person, sometimes the person seems like it might be a little bit more important than the sky. Okay, so we definitely don't want to go in that direction. We want to find something where the sunrise or sunset or the galaxy can be the main subject. Okay, so now that I have this drawn, I'm going to move on to my next step, which is where I'm getting my supplies for this part. And so I'm going to set this to the side, and I'm going to go to the back counter. And I've got this cup here. So this is a small plastic cup, so not super big. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to fill this cup up to this bottom line right here, the very bottom line, not this little tiny thing, but right here, this bottom line. And I'm going to fill it up with the stuff that is in this bottle right here. Okay, so this is just a repurposed bottle, and you'll notice there's some like liquid inside that's kind of clear, and it's kind of the consistency of almost like hand sanitizer a little bit. but I call it goop. It's the loving name that we're going to use for this. Okay, so you're just going to pour some into your cup here like this. Okay, so I'm going to put some down here. Right, and again, I don't want to go over this bottom line down here. Okay, so I poured some in here. I actually went a little bit less than this bottom line, but that's okay. And then I'm going to, so I'll take this back to my seat, and then I'm going to look at the different colors of yarn that I have available and which ones will fit best in my color scheme, right? So they're separated by main groups of color. I've got my greens, I've got my yellows and oranges here. Let me see if I can adjust that. Don't know if that made it better, right? I've got some pinks, some purples, got some reds and some blues, okay? And then I have a couple of bigger containers that have a couple of random colors in them, but also one that has some neutrals, right? So like gray, black, brown, white, okay? So I'm gonna pull the colors that I think go best with my galaxy picture. Okay, so I want to look at my picture. Okay, so I have, I'm gonna pull this up so you guys can see it here. Make sure I have this. Okay. So I have my picture here, okay? You can see a little bit closer, right? And I'm looking at the different colors there. And for me, I think what is going to be the best choice is to maybe do some of these stars first, just so I make sure I have those in. And then I'm probably going to start in the center and kind of just work my way out from there. For me, that makes the most sense. If you're doing a sunset, right, you might find it easier to start at the bottom and get the base part done if you have a little bit of land and then work your way up from there. Some people find that starting in that area makes a little bit more sense to them, just because there's definite lines, right? So we have a definite line where the sun is, where the land is, and then where the colors kind of start from there. Okay, so I'm looking at the colors that I have here, and I also want to look at what's going on in Starry Night, okay? Because that's a Van Gogh painting that maybe I'm inspired by. So one of the things that I see is that it's very dynamic. He doesn't just use one blue. He has many blues going on in the sky. So I'm going to keep that in mind while I'm working on mine. Okay. I also like that he has a lot of movement in here and that he has a couple of colors mixed. So you can kind of see where there's some overlap between the yellow and the blue going on in his painting. And so I'm going to kind of keep that in mind as I'm working on the colors for this one right here. Okay. So I picked out a couple of my preliminary colors, and I only started with just a few colors, okay? Because I'm not going to do this whole entire thing today. I'm just starting a little bit at a time. So you're gonna get a few colors, and you can always go back and get more colors when you're ready for that step, okay? So I have a couple of different colors here, some lighter colors. And again, I chose colors that may not be totally exact because I want to have a dynamic look here, okay? And so, for example, it looks kind of white, but up close, there are some speckles of color in here that are kind of like blues and reds. That just made it fuzzier, okay? I also grabbed this light purple color that I might use towards the middle, and I have a little bit of light blue, and then I have some kind of just plain white, and then these right here are actually gray and white. I feel like that would be kind of nice maybe for some of these stars. Okay, and I think that I'm actually going to maybe start with some of these stars first and then kind of work in the middle. So when I am working on this, I'm going to take my cup of goop, I'm going to take my yarn, and I'm going to fully submerge my yarn into my goop here. Okay, so I'm going to put this in here and kind of swirl it around a little bit. Make sure I get in there, right? And then I'm going to pull this yarn out. And this goopy stuff is quite goopy, but I don't want it to be so goopy that it's just totally covered. So I'm going to take my yarn like this, and I'm going to take my 2 fingers and I'm going to swipe off the extra amount. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pulling this through my fingers here, and it gets off the excess goop, right? Now, like I said, this has kind of a hand sanitizer feel to it, kind of feels a little grosser than that, but I'm just taking off the extra goop here. So I submerge it completely so that my whole piece of yarn is covered, but then I take off the excess amount because I don't want it to be too like wet here. Okay, so I've got this extra taken off here. If you need to, you can wipe your fingers on the side. Okay, and I'm going to start with one of these stars here. Okay, so I'm just going to lay this down and I'm going to start kind of forming it. And I'm doing a swirly kind of look for my stars because I want it to be rounded out, right? And so I'm just going to kind of start forming this on there into a little spiral here, like this. Kind of bring this around. Okay, and I need to make this a little bit smaller, so I'm going to kind of make this a little bit of a tighter feel here, like this, and then I'm going to kind of move it over into this area. Okay, now I'm going to kind of manipulate this by moving it around just a little bit to kind of get the right shape that I'm going for. Okay, so once you're pretty happy with that, you can move on to the next one. This is a little bit bigger than what I was maybe intending for originally. So another thing that you might do is you might pre-cut your yarn to be a little bit smaller, right? So for example, if I was using this piece of white yarn right here, I might cut it to be a smaller piece first before I start working on that, okay? For example, I have this one right here, which looks like it's a little bit of a smaller piece of yarn, and so I might do that for my next star. Okay, so again, I take my yarn, I dip it into my cup here, kind of swirl it around a little bit, and then I'm going to pull this yarn piece out, and it's very goopy. I'm going to hold it by one end, and I'm going to kind of squeeze the extra goop off of that. Okay, and I'm trying to make sure all this goop goes inside of the cup so I don't have it on my table, because then that can make things a little out of control and messy there. Okay, so I have my next one here. I think I'm going to put this one right in this area. Okay, so I'm going to kind of work on swirling this around, just like this again. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of manipulate it, move it around to where I want it to be. And remember, I don't want really any cardboard showing through, so I'm going to try to make sure I don't have that. Okay, and so I have another star there. Okay, maybe I'm starting on my second part here, right? Let's look ahead at that. I'm going to, the very center of that is pretty white, and so I'm going to go ahead and grab this one right here, okay? And I'm going to dip this into the goop, swirl it around, make sure it's fully submerged and covered, okay? I'm going to pull it out, right? Remember, it's very goopy, and I'm going to squeeze off the extra amount of goop, okay? And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it towards the center here. And like I said, the very middle of it is pretty bright white, so I'm going to kind of go with that there. Okay, and then it starts to get kind of pinkish, kind of purpley-ish. Okay, and so what I might do is for this section here, I might kind of leave this out, and I think I'm going to grab a little bit of this kind of purple color, and because I think this is pretty close, there's some areas that look like it's kind of has a purpley tint. Okay, so I fully submerged it, it's all the way covered. I'm going to squeeze this excess off here. Just like this. I'm going to do both sides. Make sure I've got all of that. Okay, and then for this part, I'm going to kind of add this into my little spiral that I have. Okay, because I want those colors to kind of go in there together. Okay, so I'm going to kind of add this into my spiral here, like this, and keep bringing this around here. Okay, and I'm just kind of manipulating this. And maybe I want to add another little bit in there. So I have this color here that was not pure white. It has a little bit of blue and red specks to it that I just found, kind of a random piece of yarn. So I'm going to mix that in there and pull this out, squeeze the excess off. And I think I'm going to add this to kind of my spiral situation, my mystic spiral, if you will. Okay. Let's kind of fit that in there. Like this. And then we kind of bring this out here, right? And so if I wanted to put another piece of purple, I could in there, or whatever I'm feeling would work best for my picture, okay? And so then I would just keep working from there. And then of course, once you get your yarn here, it's kind of like glue, so you can kind of move it around a little bit. It takes a while to dry, so it definitely won't dry today. You can kind of move it, pat it down, reform it a little bit if you need to. Sometimes it gets kind of moved around, right? And then I would just keep going from there. Now, whenever it's time to clean up, if I have any leftover yarn, okay, I can either put that, I can take it with me for my project in the future, or I can put it back if I just had like a lot of yarn that I accidentally got. My cup of goop will go back into the big goop bucket, which we'll talk about in class. Okay, and this right here is obviously not dry, so it's going to go onto the drying rack, and so it can be ready to go for tomorrow. Okay, and then you'll just keep adding on. So each day that you work on this, you'll keep adding on to the next step. Okay, and it'll always go on the drying rack there. Make sure you save your picture so you can find it, but that is how we are starting and working on our project.